Hello, and another instalment of getting the teleprinter running. I guess we've mostly got it running now, and we're kind of into tuning it. Maybe, I don't know. It's still not printing out what we want, but last episode we did get it printing out something. And yeah, go and watch the previous video if you want to see. Yeah, sending an A and getting an M and all sorts of goodness like that. But yeah, so another day of working around on it. So today, Paul is going to take a look at the transmitter. So yeah, this is the keyboard bit, which will then send messages. We're going to loop back to get it to print what it's sending. But there's all of these lovely contacts and mechanical system here. So Paul's going to have a look at sort of tuning that, making sure the gaps are right, or getting a clean signal out of it basically. One of the things we saw last time was that the paper carriage isn't moving across, which is why all of our letters are down, because we can move the paper up and down quite easily. But yeah, I'm going to have a look at the carriage mechanism just to see if we can work out how to get it to move when we type. And Mike is going to be playing with these little circuit boards. And so these...
So that's a high voltage regulator. So that's going to take the 120 volts we get from our big power supply and bring it down to 80 volts. And then this is a buck DC to DC converter, which takes 80 volts in and gives you plus or minus 80 volts out. Excellent,
which yeah is what the signaling ideally wants. I mean, it seems to work fine with lower voltages, but that'll get us up to the spec voltages for those sorts of things. So that's today's plan. I have some progress with the carriage side of things. So I've just done a bit of cleaning and greasing and oiling, sorry, so you can see that this moves quite nicely. This bit at the end is actually the kind of soft sort of soft close mechanism, I suppose, for want of a better thing. A little air piston, so it goes. When it goes into this bit, so that slides over it, I guess. Yeah, if you're coming round, you can see it'll kind of come into it, and that basically builds a little air piston. And there's a tiny hole in this which regulates how much air gets out, so that when it gets to this end, it gets some like cushioning as it comes in. So when it comes from the far end, it doesn't just smack right into the end. So that seems to be working quite nicely. We did spot some I don't know how well it's going to come out on camera, but there is a bunch of the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog sort of text still on the roller. And I think we've worked out getting the mechanism for moving the carriage along. So Paul did a quick test with the back of the receiver visible. So these two are the carriage return and line feed. Can't remember which way around they are. But this bit, which isn't really moving because it's all connected to stuff, that moves side to side when each character comes in. So on this, I can mimic, that's this moving side to side. It's not doing anything at the moment, but that's because something presumably on the back on the receiver is going to trigger this bit, which then enables these two levers to kind of locate into the teeth of this drum, and then it moves across character at a time, so as we're typing stuff in, and then eventually it will get all the way around so that this little kind of cam triggers this bit here to let us know that we are getting near to the end. And then this red button on the top is the same as the carriage return, so that I can trigger that. So if I press the carriage return and make sure my fingers aren't going to get smacked by a carriage, it goes back to the start. So maybe this will work when we connect it up to the rest of the teleprinter.
So while Adrian's been working on the carriage, we have here the transmit box. This is what I've been looking at. And the problem we had last time was that the mark and the space contacts here would not make contact, and we had the problem trying to get the loopback working. So today, this part of the mechanism, the roller jockey, or at least that's what that part is, this would be the adjustment for it, and I've set that and lifted the jockey over on top of this small little point here. That applies pressure down so that when it's in mark or space position, it can hold it with a bit of force. And I think that must be the missing piece, or at least one of them, to make this mechanism work. I tested it just before with continuity, and it seems to work, or hop backwards and forwards, but there is a small catch when you're running it without the motor, that the final stop bit doesn't seem to pull it back to its idle state unless the motor's running. So we can run it first with a letter just to see we're in the that is the mark position, which should be idle, and Adrian's going to press a key, say R or any key, yep, and it alternates, yes. And sends a letter. Except now it's stuck in space, which is not idle. But when the motor runs, it should send a character.
Right.
Or at least it should sound like it's sending a character, so we're going to find out whether it really will or not next.
Okay, so let me power this up. We good to power everything up?
Seems good.
Okay.
So you might not be able to tell.
Let's see if I can get this camera a bit nearer to the near the feet.
So I'm going to go there.
And so if we go, you wanted the R, didn't you?
Yeah. And now it's idling correctly. Correct. And we'll try it with the other one. It just barely beeps. I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but it does beep. It's a good sign. And in any case, it's a good sign.
Excellent. So that's some progress on that, and then next we can put the carriage back on, fix up the loop back, and then give it another test. Yeah. Cool. Good. Right, we've been trying to work out why this isn't printing when we press the keys, which was, the problem we were having at the end of the video last time. We've put a scope on it so we could see the output coming out from the keyboard transmitter unit, and that seemed to be, wiggling up and down as you'd expect it to, but still nothing from the electromagnet. And so we traced stuff back through the wiring on our external kind of connector block, which is this is a data cable that goes across to the printer, and so we ended up lifting up because everything was fine on the connector block, so we were then,
so we thought,
like, okay, let's see where the signal goes next. So that we lifted it up, which we mostly kind of ignored all these nice wires because it seemed to be generally all right. I mean, it probably still is. So there are these two connector blocks here, which is where that data cable comes into, and if you see on the wiring diagram over here, which we've been tracing, you get blocks B and A, and they're the two connector blocks that we were just showing on the underside. And in some of that, we were then, that would then let us work out and look at what the wiring was. And we traced it back and realized that this electromagnet connector, which goes on one side is white, which is where we're feeding our loop back into. So that was coming through. And then the other side goes to the red wire. And at that point, we realized that the red connector on our data cable, where's the red? The red one is here, which you can see this wire here is now going to the ground center point of the power supply. This is a new wire that we've reconnected, which we did document in our issue when we were kind of making a note of where we'd got to.
4 weeks ago.
Yeah, like a month ago, and had forgotten at the end of last time, and also forgotten this time, because it looks like it's just documenting like, oh yeah, you tie the two power supplies together, and then it's like, and on the end, and you connect it to the red. So we've now connected that to red. So we should see if we turn on the power supply to the data side of things, so that's plus and minus 15 volts, just about. And if I turn on the power supply to the unit itself, and now maybe if I press the R key, it did something. Excellent. So next will be, we should put the carriage back on so that we can get some bit of paper in front of that press, and then we can see if now the loopback works, maybe we'll be able to actually print characters, and maybe it'll be the character we want. It might not. So we'll do a bit of reassembly and then pull the camera back on to do the moment of truth. So we've just been trying out our different letters and spotted that, F doesn't seem to actually result in anything being printed, which is interesting. And Y doesn't get anything printed. Y doesn't. And carriage return results in something being printed, which not completely convinced that that's true, and that should happen. Similarly, line feed prints something, which don't think that should either. So it's not boding well for when we put the carriage back on, but let's put the carriage back on and see what happens next. Well, the carriage is back on now and all ready to be seeing if we get the correct letters printed on it, which, judging by our carriage return and line feed printing characters, seems like it's maybe not going to happen, but we'll see. And also see if the carriage moves along, which it should do.
No, after the cleaning.
Now it's been cleaned, yeah. So power on. Let's try an H. It didn't seem to move. Didn't seem to print anything either, although it tried to. G, it's quite near to H. I mean, it's just one character across on the keyboard. We didn't get any. I wonder if it's kind of stuck on the end of the. Like, it does get, it's a bit stiff on the cushion bit. So, well, that moved the wrong way. And also printed a G, even though I tied an R, which is only that's diagonally up from the. And they're all nearby the G character. Maybe if I do a W. That didn't print anything. Although it's possibly printing, I guess it's lined up with one of these hammers that don't have a character on them. So maybe the carriage return isn't supposed to have a character. We've got an M when I do carriage return. I mean, it's slash N, isn't it? That's a new line, isn't it? Well, in carriage return, should be slash R. Yeah. And we got another M when I did line feed. Yeah, it's just made it go a bit crazy. Escort's an M. So it likes doing M characters. Yeah, interesting. And the carriage still isn't working to advance it. So, yeah, inconclusive so far.
Okay, picking up from last time when we couldn't get a intelligible character to come through, and we were confused whether even the non-printable characters, why they were spinning the drum. So all we did was increase the voltage. It turned out that the voltage, which was previously set on 15 volts, and simply by increasing it to 30, that was enough to allow the electromagnet to correctly strike the correct pins in sequence, in time, and with the right amount of response to strike the character. And it always strikes the previous character that you typed, so it requires it always requires a character in advance for it to print the full string. So with the power on, we'll see this in action.
Let's just get to some clear paper, so we're not tricking out. There's no trickery, it's definitely clear paper that I've wound back behind there. And Paul is going to, don't know, what are you going to type? Well, let's see. W.
Not printed anything yet.
No, but that was the last thing we printed. And then we've got a W. And then we've got an I. Did you type wins?
I started with win, and then I think I pressed an X, so it might have still missed one or a few keys. Maybe 30 volts is good, but
We need more.
80 volts better.
80 volts might just be better to print every character. Yeah,
Or at least better, a bit more than 30 volts.
yeah.
So we've gone from 15 volts on the intelligible characters to 30 volts mostly intelligible characters.
So yeah, and I guess let's try another X, and there was a C, but that might be, so that for the next one is also an X. Yeah, no, the X is working.
Did it that time.
And so if I do a Z now, that would be an X because that was the previous character I typed. So the next character, if I do a space, then we can see if we got nothing.
See, I was being adventurous and trying the figures, so I wanted plus really.
Oh,
Try
okay.
the L, because the L was the character.
And the L did a very strange thing because it just spun this centrifugal clutch mechanism, but doesn't now. And it types an L. Carriage return seems to stop somewhere in the middle, which is mostly okay, but we've got another L. Interesting.
You set 2 volts.
Did I? Yeah. Well, some progress at least. Maybe a bit more testing that's a bit more rigorous, but
It could have just been from the
it prints the right thing, some of the time at least. More diagnosis and working out why the carriage doesn't move across when you're trying to type, because that's kind of useful in a teleprinter. And we'd worked out earlier that this mechanism is the bit that transfers the I want to go a character along from the teleprinter, and that's working fine. Like when it was trying to print stuff, you could see this action just moving without any problem. And we worked out earlier that basically the tricky bit, there are these two levers here, which should engage with the teeth on this wheel and should move it round. When that happens, you know, these things pushing forwards should push the wheel round to slowly rotate that and then make the carriage move. Now, they aren't engaging fully at the moment because they're held from engaging by this lever, which, you know, you can see that's pushing these away from the teeth so that it doesn't engage when you're doing the carriage return. But this lever isn't allowing them to engage fully when they should do by this lever. And we'd worked out earlier that if we just flick that lever down, then, you know, it starts to lift the carriage up without any problem. And yet, whenever we would reset things, the carriage return would come back and it wouldn't reset the lever. It would be still stuck in this position where it doesn't do anything. And then we noticed we thought at first it was going to be something on the teleprinter that would flick this lever, but it's not. Once it's back on the teleprinter, there's definitely there's no lever on the teleprinter that could trigger that lever. And we worked out, Mike spotted that there's this tiny little bit, if I move it a bit away, this little tiny bit here on the carriage, which was striking this but not really striking it enough. Like, so when the carriage return comes down, it was, you know, that pushes this lever, and basically this bend wasn't quite as bent and so it wasn't lifting this lever quite enough, and so now when we've got that lever done, it will crank up and then we can carriage return and it goes back to being able to print again. So the next step is to put it back on the teleprinter and print something. So we should put some paper back into the carriage and put the carriage back on the teleprinter and then try some printing. Well, we've got actually let me show you. There we go, one carriage on the teleprinter, ready for the moment of truth when we're going to see if we can type something in. Tom's made it across to join us as well now, so I think we'll get him to do the honours of turning the teleprinter on and then typing something whilst I zoom in on the paper to see if it's going to move for the moment of truth.
Cool, so I'll switch it on.
Other on switch, that's the second power supply.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So, what are you going to type, Tom?
I'm going to type hello.
Okay, so let's see.
That's an H. Underneath, you should see a H.
It moved.
There's an L. Should see an E. Another L. Should see another L. At the moment, we shouldn't see anything yet on the screen. And it's the off. Roll that up slightly. It's worked.
Hey!
Fantastic.
We're not going to do anything more ever. Like, it's printed the word we wanted. That's it. Yeah, this is the end of the sit now. Great. That is quite some, yeah.
Just to mention as well, Paul did some work tightening the mechanism here prior to us switching back on again. So Paul might be responsible for giving us the correct letters as well. Although Adrian sorted the feed out.
With Mike's help, yeah, it's a team effort, all of this stuff.
Yeah, and I just watched. So.
You typed the word that it printed for the first time. Yeah? That's not I just watched, you know.
Yeah.
Teleprinter operator extraordinaire.
Yeah.
So yeah, that might be. Yeah, is that it for today? What time is it? Yeah, it's probably getting.
No, we need to add world.
Oh, we need to add world. Yeah, okay, yeah, good point. Let's type in world.
Okay.
And
then roll it up a bit.
waffle. So near and yet so far. But that's what we're always doing, pushing the boundaries to the point where it doesn't quite work perfectly. But yeah, that's a good step forwards. I'm not sure what we need to do. Well, there's more interfacing with the electronics now, probably, but yeah, that'll be on the next episode.
Thank you.